All right, guys, welcome to episode 2, week 1 recap, essentially, of our Dynasty Fantasy Football Rebuild series. If you missed the last episode, it'll be linked down below in the description. Essentially, last episode to recap it, really just kind of went over our team, what it looks like, our philosophy for our team this year, what the series is really going to be consisting of week in and week out, and kind of taking you along that journey of trying to build a Dynasty Football championship team that hopefully can have some long-term success, right? So I think without kind of rambling on too much, let's just kind of dive into the team, show you how we did in week 1, right? So here's the team here. There's really no sugarcoat in it. We did not perform very well. We lost by 4 points, which is always a bit of a kick in the nuts, you can kind of say. Just little things that can come up and happen that can be that 4 point difference, right? So you see 152 to 104. I want to go over a couple of things, right? First and foremost, some standout performances, right? So first and foremost, my guy Justin Herbert, he had an amazing game against the Chiefs. Over 300 passing yards. I think it was 300, if I do my math right, exactly 350 all-purpose yards. Didn't take too many sacks, 0 interceptions, 3 touchdown passes. He looked great. Hopefully, the goal is the rest of the season he performs right like that, right? Not just because I'm a Chargers fan saying that, but also just on a fantasy wise, he brings a lot of value if he's throwing the ball, 34, 35 times a game, getting, somewhere 250 to 300 plus passing yards with a couple passing touchdowns included in there, right? Another standout performance that I kind of want to shout out was actually on our bench. Another Charger, right? It's going to be Quentin Johnson here. He had a great game, right? The guy that no hands had 5 receptions on 7 targets, about 80 receiving yards in those 2 touchdowns, which was huge. You take away those 2 touchdowns, he still has a really good solid week, which I think is important to look at. You can look at guys that maybe put up 15 points and you take that touchdown away and they didn't really get even to that 10-point marker, only got 10 points. So the scoring is definitely necessary, right? Getting touchdowns and whatnot. But, you also want to make sure that they're getting a pretty good volume because most of the time those touchdowns just come, right? So we're not going to focus too much on our bench here, which was very low performing. Cooper Kupp did not have a very good week. Rashad White had 2 carries. Jalen Lane, even with Christian Kirk out, only had two targets after him. Eckler didn't have the best game, especially with Brian Robinson being gone, and he's the lead back. Tutton didn't get too much. Braylon Allen got that touchdown, but you take that touchdown away, and it's zero point 0.9 points, right? Caleb Williams had a good game too, which is always nice to see from our quarterback on the bench. So to touch on a little bit more disappointing performances and bum of the week, we could call it. Chase Brown didn't look great. He had that touchdown, but you take that touchdown away, and that is just not a very good performance. It'd be about 2.8 plus another 4.3. So I think it'd be about like 8 points, 6, 7 points, something like that he would have gotten. They gave him the ball a lot, 21 times, especially towards the end of the game, and he lost a little bit of yards during that when he was getting it. He was getting stopped behind the line a couple times, and I think that lowered his points. I think he was up to like 15 points at one point, which would have been a little bit better, but and we're definitely hoping to see more out of Chase Brown, right? Hopefully, you can always think about week 1 as something that just kind of happens, right? You don't really know how teams are going to perform, how quarterbacks are going to perform, and what teams might respond, especially if they're division matchups, things like that. So, not too much that we should read into week 1 of only putting up that 100 points, but especially out of the gate, you want to see some guys a little bit better, right? Marion Hampton, first career game, didn't look terrible. I just think the Chiefs have a very good defensive line. Even though Justin Herbert didn't get sacked too much and really didn't have too much pressure going on, consider it's Hampton's first ever career game. I think you can take those 15 attempts looks great, 48 yards, which could have been better. A touchdown really would have been in a lot better performance, but overall, I think a lot of room to grow there. Chris Olave actually had a 13 targets with 7 catches, only 54 yards, but that's a good performance in week 1 for a Saints team that really wasn't expecting too much. George Pickens just, I wouldn't say he looked awful. It's just Dak was just so much focused on CeeDee Lamb that George Pickens did not get a lot of opportunities to really showcase what he did have. He had that really long deep ball that got called for pass interference, and he really didn't get looked at too much. So I am expecting Dallas to incorporate him a little bit more in the passing game, right? TJ Hawkinson Monday night, just he had 4 targets, but it was only 15 yards, right? Only 4.5 points, and we really needed him to have a little bit of a better game so we could have won last week. But hopefully that Vikings offense, they really turned it around towards the second half of the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter looked really good. So hopefully moving forward, they could kind of find their rhythm as a team, and Hawkinson can still be that tight end, top 5 tight end that we're looking for. Tony Pollard did okay. He was on the field a lot, had 18 carries. That Titans O line just looked awful for Cam Ward. Dallas is a very, very good defense, and they were really bringing the pressure. But I think a part that kills us more is that fumble, right? You take that fumble away, and he almost has 10 points, which isn't still very good, but would have just definitely been a bit of a help. And then Jerry Jeudy, wishing he had a little bit of a better performing game. I think his stats are actually a little inflated just from that last play of the game where he got a couple yards. It was nothing too crazy, but you're definitely hoping that he gets a little bit more action right in the passing game. I know he kind of tied with Cedric Tillman in targets, and they had the same line. Jerry Jeudy just had a couple more yards, and Tillman had that touchdown. So hopefully moving forward, Judy's a little bit more of the offense, right? So I would say in terms of how our team did, I think we were projected, about 125, 123, around that range in terms of points. And I think we were projected to win as well. And we missed the projection pretty hard by, 20 points. So hopefully this is just kind of a week 1 incident where just low scoring for the team happens. And, moving forward, the team can actually perform a little bit better and possibly improve a little bit. So in terms of our targets and transactions that we're looking for, so I think the biggest thing that we could be looking for is a tight end, right? So I picked up Tyler Higbee. I just kind of wanted to see how he would do. Obviously, he did nothing, right? He had 0 targets, 0 receptions, was only on the field for 60% of the snaps. I think Tyler Higbee's best days as a fantasy asset, especially in like 2022, even 2019, they're just behind him. He's had a couple injuries and just different changes on that team, and I don't think he's really a viable fantasy option. But I wanted to pick him up just to kind of see how that would look, right? So I think the biggest thing that we're going to be looking for is a tight end. In terms of the tight ends that are available, there's really not too much, right? There's Jatavian Sanders, but even in that first week, he didn't really have too much of a showing of the game. The Panthers didn't look very great. Noah Fant did have that touchdown, but I'm a little weary about having players from the same team on my starting roster just because, if something happens with Chase Brown getting the ball, the other guy like Noah Fant, he won't get the ball, right? So that's also a reason why Quentin Johnson, I'm not sure when he's going to get into our starting roster because that's 3 Chargers guys, and that's putting a lot of faith in that Chargers team, right? So I'm going to be kind of targeting some tight ends. I don't think anything's going to happen this week. Cole Kmet is, not really an option either. And Will Dissly is, another Charger that we're not going to look for. So we kind of just have to keep our eye out a little bit about what we kind of want to go for in terms of that tight end spot. Maybe TJ Hawkinson does have a good game moving forward. And then in terms of trades, I think I would love to get another pass catcher, right? Another wide receiver that can maybe be a little bit more reliant and dependable for us. Obviously, I don't want to spend too much of the assets that we have left to get something like that, but we'll see how the season plays out. I was really happy with Chris Olave getting the ball so much. George Pickens, we want to see a little bit more, and Judy still had some targets, but I want to see him, eclipse those 100 yards, get touchdowns. Essentially, I need these guys scoring, right? If you have some of these touchdowns, right? If Hampton scored a touchdown, Olave, Pickens, if any of these other guys scored a touchdown, we would have won this week. So that's the biggest thing is we need some guys to get in the end zone to get those scoring points that are essentially the big booster for your team, right? So I did want to go in this episode and just share with you guys our rookie draft that we did this year, right? So kind of break down for you what our draft looked like to kind of give you an idea about the mindset going in when we draft and how we kind of put our team together, right? So I had the second overall pick. That's when I took Marion Hampton. This is kind of how that first round shaped out. A lot of running backs went in the first round, and then obviously pass catchers were going right after that. So we just did a pretty standard. It wasn't a snake. So I took Hampton my first pick. Second round, I took Mason Taylor as my tight end. I just felt like he was a good tight end that was still on the board. I mean, obviously here Elijah Arroyo, he did not do very good. His debut, he only had one target. You look at some other ones, Terrence Ferguson didn't even get on the ball. Harold Fannin had a really good game. I don't think he was, kind of someone that was on the radar for myself, especially when you have David Njoku on that Browns team. I wouldn't expect, their rookie tight end to have the game that he did. It really wasn't even the best game ever, but he had 7 targets for 63 yards, which was pretty nice. So terms keep going through with that second round. Again, there's some other pass catchers maybe could have looked into, but none of them, especially in that first week, even really made a pretty big impact, right? Matthew Golden did a little bit. He had 2 catches for 16 yards, but he was on the field at least. And Trey Harris wasn't on the field too much. Luther Burden didn't really do too much either in his debut. So I don't think we really missed out with going with Mason Taylor over, somebody else, right? So keep going through in that second round. We had the last pick in the second round. So I took Bashal Tutton, someone I wanted to touch on, especially with Tank Bigsby getting traded over to the Eagles. Tutton automatically goes into that RB2 position. And what I'm hoping happens, ETN had a really good game, but I'm hoping Tutton takes over kind of that Tank role. So, red zone, Tutton gets some carries early, maybe some third down opportunities. Tutton gets the ball. Really hoping to kind of see him catapult into more of a role where he gets the ball, just essentially just more, right? Obviously, I felt Tank was expendable with Tutton second there, so hopefully this looks like a good option, right? So moving forward, we had a little bit of a later pick in the third round, and that's where we went with Jalen Noel. Again, didn't really do too much with his opportunities, but I think you have to always remember some of these rookies. It's their first career game. I mean, even with Ashton Genty, he didn't really do too much. He had the touchdown, which was really, really nice, but overall, he had, 3, 4, 5, 5.8, 5, 6. He had like 12 points, which is fine because he had that touchdown, right? So I think that's something to always remember. Going into the fourth round, we didn't have a pick in the fourth round. And then going over to the fifth round, that's when we took Isaac. I think it's Isaac. Isaac Tesla. He had the touchdown, 1 catch, or 1 target, 1 catch, 1 touchdown, 13 yards. Looking good. I definitely think he's going to be a pretty good wide receiver in the future for us. Obviously, when they're throwing him touchdowns, especially in a game like that where they're not doing well, it's always nice to see. So hopefully that means for him that we're going to have a good wide receiver on our hands in the future, right? Depending on what Dallas chooses to do with their pass catchers, but I do think he's going to be seeing the field a lot more. I don't think week 2 it's going to be that biggest thing, but I think by the time we get to like week 5 or week 6, that he's going to be on the field pretty consistently, right? And then the final pick of our draft, I actually took Taj Brooks, so I ended up just dropping. He didn't do anything that first week, so I wasn't really concerned. I saw, he had some good preseason games, but essentially, he didn't see the field at all. And with Chase Brown, I don't think much is going to happen to him. Fingers crossed. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But yeah, this was our draft here in terms of our rookie draft. This was actually our first ever rookie draft that we did do. So previously, before this, we were a sleeper. So we would keep, I think it was 3 people that we choose to keep on our team. I think it said sleeper. It was keeper. We kept 3 people on our team, and then we just redrafted the rest. But we wanted it to make it more. We've had this league for a couple of years now. We wanted to do a dynasty to really to amplify it a little bit more. So that's the draft results. If you wanted to kind of take a look here, let me know if maybe I missed out. I don't really think I missed out on a lot of people, especially early on. Towards the end of the season, maybe that answer changes. Maybe there's some guys that get a lot more work than expected, but I think overall, I think we had a pretty solid draft compared to like looking at it in hindsight and everything. So looking ahead now to our team in week 2, right? So we're not changing anything up. I know it says Chris Olave is questionable. I don't think he actually is questionable. He came back into the game. I just think Sleeper's been very weird when it comes to reporting and even like injury designations. Because like I said, it says he's questionable, but he went to the sideline early with the chest injury, but again, like it says here, he quickly returned and led the team, right? So I'm not really concerned about changing the team, especially if you saw how our bench even performed. There's nobody that I would even decide to throw in. I don't expect Jalen Wright to play. I'm not going to put any of our rookies in. Did want to shout out Kamir Dyke a little bit. He did have um, a lot of kick return yards, right? I think he had one that was like 77 yards, and so hopefully in our league you don't get points for kick returns, unfortunately, unless they're a touchdown, which I think you should get points from, but whatever. Um, but I am excited to see if the Titans decide to use him a little bit more just in the passing game, especially with how disappointing the rest of the receivers did in terms of catching some of those Cam Ward balls, especially at the end of the game. So again, we're not going to change up the team. We're going to leave it as it is moving forward, and essentially, fingers crossed that they can kind of have that bounce back. I think Hampton's going to get a little bit less carries. Najee Harris is probably going to be a little bit more up to speed, ready to go. I expect George Pickens, TJ Hawkinson, and Jerry Jeudy to all have bounce back games. Tony Pollard, I think, is pretty consistent what we'll see with him, right? I think, once you get a touchdown in there, he's a pretty consistent, I think, 12 to 16 point guy. If he gets over 16, that's really good, but that's what I would kind of expect to see, especially with Tajay Spears not playing for the first couple of weeks, that Tony Pollard is going to get, most of the volume going forward. So looking ahead at our week 2 matchup, we're playing Suck My Ditka out here. He's also 0-1, and we're projected to win, which is awesome. He has George Kittle that he has to actually take out of his lineup. So hopefully that'll be a good boost for our team. Looking at his bench, he's got, Geno Smith, he's got Tyler Lockett, Michael Pittman, who had a pretty good game. I actually used to have Michael Pittman on my team. I traded him. Um, uh, I guess for a 2026 second round pick in Michael Pittman for a second round pick last season. But yeah, Michael Pittman had a pretty good game. I wish I kept him, but if you look, he had injuries in 2024, bad quarterback situation, and who knew that Daniel Jones would be the answer for that team, right? So hopefully our team can perform again a little bit better this week against this team, and we can kind of get ourselves to 500 and essentially reset after week 2. Possibly make some moves if we have to and go from there. So I did kind of want to mention too, I'll be going out of town this weekend. So hopefully there's no injuries that pop up on my team, because I probably won't be able to see him because I'll be actually in Europe, which would be pretty cool. So with that being said, next week there actually won't be a video recapping week 2 and going into week 3. The next video that will come out will be recapping week 2 and week 3 together, and then going over our week 4 turnout, how it's looking, and kind of how our team expects to do, and going from there. So it kind of works out because right now episode 1 is week 0, episode 2 is week 1. Essentially episode 3 will be week 3, and then the episodes in the weeks will be caught up on each other, which will be really nice. So that's kind of how we're rolling here. I don't have any transactions that are going to be going in yet, so that's why this video is going to be going up on Wednesday, probably Wednesday morning, I would expect. So yep, so that's how we did. Hopefully moving forward in terms of the standings right now, if you wanted to take a quick look at it, we are in, where do I find that? Here we are. So we're in 8th place right now. The top 6 make the playoffs. There's really not a big point difference between 8 and 7. Obviously there's a pretty big gap between 6 and 8, and sometimes you get lucky in fantasy football. You score 86 points and that's enough for a win, and you're the 5th seed, right? So there's a lot of ebb and flows in fantasy. Hopefully our team can right this ship. But I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think of our draft, how I did with it, especially how my team performed as well. Right now we're projected about, for next week, about 127 points, which hopefully our team can obviously exceed those expectations, but obviously projections are not always accurate. So I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to leave a like if you want to, again, look at last week's video to kind of go over our team and everything. That's going to be linked down in the description or just in the playlist on the channel. And again, subscribe to kind of follow this whole journey with us. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you after week 3.